The one who cares less controls more, a cold, ruthless truth, and yet one that echoes through every relationship. But here's the paradox: what if you once loved her deeply? What if you gave her everything, your time, your loyalty, your heart? How are you supposed to not care now? Ask yourself this: what if your silence hurts her more than your words ever could? What if the more you pull away, the more she feels the absence like a ghost she can't shake? In today's video, we're not here to talk about winning her back. We're going to explore something more powerful and far more unsettling: how your complete detachment, your calm indifference, can make the woman who once felt in control begin to question everything. This isn't about games, it's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't doesn't react and cannot be manipulated. It starts with silence. Let's begin. 1. The power of absence. Why silence speaks louder than love. There's a strange paradox in human nature: we only begin to value what we can no longer reach. We breathe air every moment of our lives, yet we don't notice it until we're underwater, gasping for it. Attention, like air, loses its weight when it's always present, but take it away and suddenly it becomes everything. This is where many men stumble after heartbreak. Conditioned by desperation, they chase, they text, plead, and perform, believing that their presence will restore connection. But this is not love, it is submission, and submission never earns respect. What it confirms to Harris exactly what she suspected all along: that she holds the reins, that you are still emotionally bound, and that your worth is dependent on her gaze. Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The moment you withdraw, not with resentment, but with calm detachment, you begin to embody this Stoic wisdom. You become still, you become scarce, and in your absence something shifts. She expected emotion, she expected pain, she expected you to fight for her approval like every man before. But when you do not, when you disappear into silence as if she no longer holds dominion over your mind, that is when the doubt creeps in. That is when you reclaim your power. The Stoics did not advocate cruelty, they taught clarity. They taught us that our peace is not tied to another's affection, but to our ability to choose our response. In walking away, you are not punishing her, you are freeing yourself, and ironically, it is in this freedom that she begins to feel your presence more acutely than ever. Why? Because silence creates a vacuum, and the human psyche cannot tolerate a vacuum. When she no longer sees you liking her posts, when your name no longer appears in her notifications, when your voice no longer echoes in her inbox, her mind must confront the silence, and it starts to fill that silence with questions. Did I misjudge him? Why hasn't he reached out? Did I mean less to him than I thought? Each day of your silence waters the seed of uncertainty, and uncertainty for someone once so sure is devastating. Seneca reminds us, he who is brave is free. When you no longer seek to prove yourself, you free both her and yourself from a cycle of emotional dependence. Absence becomes your form of strength, but make no mistake, this is not passive waiting, this is intentional distance, a conscious redirection of energy inward. You are not playing games, you are mastering presence. By withholding it, you are no longer available on demand like a well she thought she could return to. It will you become in her mind not a man who vanished, but a man who outgrew the need to explain his value. When you were too available, she saw you as ordinary, predictable, easy to obtain. But the Stoic understands the principle of scarcity. Just as a rare jewel commands attention while pebbles are ignored, so too does a man who disappears from the noise of validation seeking become desirable, because he is no longer common, he is no longer part of her emotional economy, and the pain she expected you to feel, it becomes hers. The late night check of the phone, the quiet hoping for your name, the unease when none of it arrives. You have not changed the rules, you've simply stepped out of the game, and in doing so you force her to reckon not with you but with herself. The lesson here is not in silence for silence's sake, it is about alignment. You cannot beg for someone to see your worth and still expect to live with dignity. Dignity is not negotiable, it is found in absence, in restraint, in the decision to let go with strength instead of holding on in weakness. So stop measuring your worth by her response, stop waiting for signs that she misses you. The truth is, if she ever valued you at all, your absence will echo louder than anything you could say, and if she doesn't feel it, then she never truly saw you to begin with, and your silence becomes your final act of clarity. Because in Stoic philosophy, the man who controls his emotions, who steps back not out of pride but from inner resolve, is the man Who cannot be broken, you are no longer noise, you are the quiet she cannot understand, and in that quiet you become unforgettable too. Indifference, the ultimate power moveth. There's a silence colder than absence, a space more unsettling than words left unsaid. It's the look in a man's eyes when he no longer needs to prove anything. No anger, no sadness, no resentment, just indifference. Most men don't understand this kind of power. They mistake reaction for strength. They believe that if they show pain, jealousy, or even rage, it will make her reconsider, but in truth every emotional outburst is a confession that she still has power over your mind, and power, once surrendered, is rarely returned. Epictetus taught any person capable of angering you becomes your master. The same can be said of desire. If she can pull your strings with a text, a photo, or a breadcrumb of attention, then she is not merely someone from your past, she still commands your present. But when you respond with indifference, not spite, not cold cruelty, but quiet irrelevance, everything changes. She expected you to care, she expected you to seek answers, she even expected your silence to be a strategy. But true indifference cannot be faked. It is not silence while checking her stories in secret. It is not holding back words while hoping she notices your distance. No, real indifference is when you've accepted the reality fully and you've moved on so far inward that her existence no longer registers emotionally, and that to her is terrifying because the ego cannot survive uncertainty. She may have walked away thinking you would orbit her forever, ready to be called upon when the mood shifted, but now there's no signal, no visible trace that you're even affected, and this absence of reaction, this emotional flatline, it forces her to confront a question she never thought she'd ask. Did I miscalculate? Did I lose something I can't get back? You see, people chase what eludes them, they value what resists. The more easily Yuri moved, the more she confirms that she still matters. But when her messages go unanswered, when her attempts to spark jealousy fall flat, when her digital signals are met with silence, it creates discomfort, then confusion, then obsession. This is not a game, this is a rebalancing of power, because up until now your emotions may have been hers to control, but now she doesn't know where she stands. The silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the absence of emotional permission. She can no longer read you, and that uncertainty is what starts to haunt her. Seneca once wrote, he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. The man who has mastered indifference suffers no more. He has accepted what was, he does not fight the path, does not cling to imagined outcomes, he simply continues quietly unshaken. And this is what most never prepare for the version of you that no longer seeks their recognition. She may test the waters, she might like an old photo, post something vaguer, send a seemingly innocent message just to see if the bond is still alive. But here lies your moment of discipline. Do nothing. Every time you react, you teach her that she still controls the tempo. Every message you send, no matter how short or friendly, is a breadcrumb that leads back to your vulnerability. Don't give it, because here's the Stoic truth: the man who needs nothing from her becomes the man she cannot forget. It's not about making her jealous, it's about becoming so internally complete that her presence or absence no longer disturbs your inner stillness. That's real strength, not the ability to get her back, but the ability to no longer need her back. When you act from indifference, you no longer seek to change her, you do not require closure, you do not demand recognition. Your peace is not conditional, and that is what shakes her more than any act of anger or affection ever could have. So ask yourself, do you want to be remembered, or do you want to be reclaimed? Because a man who still seeks to be remembered will always be tempted to perform, but a man who has stepped beyond that, who has nothing to prove, nothing to fix, and nothing to need, becomes unforgettable, not because of what he says, but because of what he withholds. Let her feel that, let her sit with the silence, and when she readjusts, reach back, not because you're cruel, but because you've grown. Your reaction is her validation, your stillness is her reckoning. Remain unmoved. 3. You were never chasing her, you were chasing validation. Be honest with yourself, brutally honest. Was it truly her you couldn't let go of, or was it what she made you feel about yourself? Most men never stop to ask that question. They believe they are mourning a person, but in truth, they are grieving the mirror that person held up, the reflection of being wanted, desired, chosen. That's not love, that's addiction, an addiction to validation. She wasn't your home, she was your drug, and like any high, the moment it's taken away you crash, not because the Source itself was perfect, but because you never learned to feel whole without it, this is the deeper truth that Stoicism forces us to confront. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about Thema Epictetus. She didn't break you, you broke yourself. In the illusion that her attention meant you mattered. You see, when she praised you, you felt confident. When she looked at you a certain way, you felt worthy. When she laughed at your jokes, you felt needed, and in that illusion you forgot to ask, what if I could give all that to myself? But you didn't, so you kept chasing, not because she was irreplaceable, but because her gaze made you feel real. This is the hidden trap, because if you don't wake up, you'll spend your whole life chasing people not for who they are, but for what they reflect back at you. You'll call it love, you'll dress it up as connection, but underneath it all you're just saying, please tell me I matter, please tell me I'm enough. That's not stoic, that's slavery. A stoic man doesn't outsource his worth, does not place his identity in another's approval. He builds from within, quietly, relentlessly, until he no longer needs a mirror to recognize himself. This is where your transformation begins, because the moment you see the pattern, you have the chance to break it. You stop chasing her, not because you've given up, but because you've finally seen the truth. It was never about her, it was about you and what you refused to give yourself. Let that sink in. She didn't reject you, she simply stopped giving you something you relied on, and instead of standing tall, you collapsed. That collapse wasn't heartbreak, it was dependency crumbling under its own weight. This is your wake-up call. Love is not dependency, love is not a transaction for validation. Love begins where self-respect is built. So what now? Now you turn inward, you start validating yourself in silence. You hit the gym not to prove anything, but to reclaim your body. You work on your skills not to show off, but to master your craft. You build a life that feels good on the inside, even if no one claps for it on the outside. Because here's what they never tell you: women are drawn not to men who chase them, but to men who are already enough without them. The more you validate yourself, the less you need her validation, and the moment you no longer need hers, something fascinating happens. She starts seeking yours. Why? Because people always want what is self-sustained. A man who doesn't need applause is more attractive than 1,000 men who beg for attention. But here's the catch: this only works if it's real. You can't fake self-worth, you can't pretend to be indifferent while still checking her stories. You can't post cryptic quotes hoping she notices. That's not detachment, that's denial. Real validation is silent, it doesn't scream, it doesn't seek it just is. So stop lying to yourself. She was never the prize you were, you just didn't know it yet. Seneca said, as long as you need validation from others, you are owned by them. Cut the cord, let her go, not because you want her to come back, but because you finally understand she was just a symbol, and now you don't need symbols, you need sovereignty. So ask yourself now, quietly and clearly, do I still want her, or do I want to feel whole? Only one of those answers leads to freedom. For the Stoic mindset, detach or be destroyed. There comes a moment in every man's fall where he must choose: stay drowning in emotion or rise with discipline. Heartbreak is not the end of love, it's the beginning of clarity. It peels back the illusions, it strips away the ego, and it leaves you standing naked in front of one brutal truth: you cannot control what walks away, you can only control whether you follow it. Most men don't understand this. They get trapped in the loop, scrolling through old messages, dissecting every photo, replaying every goodbyes. If it still holds meaning, they think closure is a conversation, but in Stoic philosophy, closure isn't granted, it's claimed. Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Yet, when she left, what did you do? You gave your mind away, you gave it to her Instagram posts, stow her silence to the way she laughed with someone else. You handed her the reins of your inner world and let her steer your worth, and now you feel powerless, not because she's strong, but because you surrendered. That's where Stoicism cuts like a blade. You either detach or you become a prisoner. Detachment isn't numbness, it's not pretending you feel nothing, it's learning to feel everything and still not act out of weakness. It's standing in the fire of your own emotions and refusing to be consumed by the mask yourself. This what good has obsessing done? Did it bring her back? Did it restore your dignity, or did it only drain you day by day until the mirror reflected a man you no longer recognize? That man isn't you, he's the shadow of a man who believed his emotions were bigger than his purpose. So here's What you must understand, she left fine, that's external, that's her decision, and as Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. Fight is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Your response, that's yours to own fully, relentlessly. With discipline like stone. And here's the paradox, the moment you stop trying to make her feel regret is the very moment she does, because now you're no longer bleeding where she can see you're building. You hit the gym not to post, but to rebuild your body like a temple. You study not to distract yourself, but to sharpen your mind like a weapon. You disappear not as a strategy, but as a man reclaiming his path. No announcements, no updates, just silent discipline, because the one who controls his focus controls his future, and every second you spend on Harris a second stolen from your own evolution. You don't need her to see it, you don't need anyone to validate it, you just need to rise every single day until your former self becomes unrecognizable. And when she finally does look back, when curiosity eats at her, when she realizes you're no longer orbiting, when she wonders why the door never opened again, it will be too late, not out of revenge, but because the man she knew no longer exists. You didn't just survive without her, you thrived, and that is the Stoic way. The strongest men are not the loudest, they don't seek sympathy, they don't chase closure, they don't announce their comeback, they simply become. So let her wonder, let her scroll. Let her ask mutual friends what happened to you, because what happened was growth. You detached not from love, but from illusion. You detached from the fantasy that someone else is responsible for your happiness, and now you're dangerous, not because you want revenge, but because you finally reclaim the one thing no one can take from you again, your focus. And when a man learns to control where he puts his attention, he becomes unstoppable. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Well, now you have, and she shall feel it, not through your anger, not through your silence, but through your absence. You're no longer looking back, you're too busy becoming the man no one saw coming. 5. The reverse chase. When she starts to wonder, and you don't look back, there's a quiet moment that always arrives, unexpected, uninvited, when the one who left starts to feel the weight of what they gave up. It doesn't happen when you begin, doesn't happen when you try to look better online. It happens when you do nothing, no reaction, no validation, no proof of suffering. You disappear not out of spite, but because the chapter has ended, and in that silence something starts to happen. Her confidence begins to tremble. What she thought was predictable, your pursuit, your attention, your emotional availability, suddenly vanishes, and now she's left with questions. You see, most men play a losing game. After a breakup, they try to win her back. They write long messages, they analyze her stories, they hope a well-timed photo will reignite something. But here's the truth, the Stoics already understood it. Explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus, in silence you say more than any message ever could. Your absence doesn't just signal withdrawal, it signals change, evolution, closure without a performance, and that unsettles her, because she expected the same man she left, the one who waited, the one who cracked under distance, the one who still sought her approval. But when you vanish like a ghost, she doesn't just lose your presence, she loses the story in her head, the story where she was the prize, the one with control. Now you are the unknown, now you are the question mark, now you are the unfinished sentence in her mind that won't go away. It starts small, a memory, maybe a flash of your name, a check of your page, then a post, subtle and direct, meant to lure you back, but you don't respond, you don't watch, you don't reach, and the silence becomes deafening. This is the reverse chase, not because you manipulate, but because you detach, not because you play games, but because you stopped playing entirely. She was counting on your weakness, but you gave her nothing to feed on, so now the doubt grows. Did I misjudge him? Why isn't he trying to prove anything? Did he move on? This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. You are no longer who she left you, are no longer waiting. Marcus Aurelius taught the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Don't mirror her, don't retaliate, transcend. Most men relapse when the breadcrumbs come, a heart emoji, a hey, just checking in, a song lyric posted to beat. You didn't fall for it, because every time you react you rewind your growth, every time you respond you reset the story, placing her back in control. Let her wonder, the less you say the more power you hold, not over her, but over yourself, and that's the only power that matters. So what does she do? Reaches again, this time more obvious, maybe a direct Message may be bumping into you accidentally, it's not love, it's ego unraveling. Let her feel it, not your pain, but your indifference, not your desperation but your distance, and when she realizes you're no longer playing the role she cast you in, that's when she starts chasing not for love, but for clarity, for validation she no longer has. But by then you've built too far ahead of you, outgrown the old version of yourself, the one who needed closure, the one who looked back. You don't chase ghosts anymore because you've become a man who doesn't need to be remembered. You've become a man who cannot be reached, not because he hides, but because he rises. That's the Stoic victory, not reclaiming what left you but becoming someone who no longer needs to. 6. The silent mystery, how curiosity becomes obsession. There's a reason silence is feared by those who rely on attention. It's not because they dislike it, it's because they don't understand it, and what we don't understand we can't control. When you vanish without explanation, when you offer no proof of pain, no trail of breadcrumbs, no cryptic Instagram quotes, you become a mystery not just to her, but to her ego, and that mystery that drives her mad. You see, most men after being left try to be seen. They post more, they show off the gym grind, they upload stories, hoping she'll notice. They share motivational lines that reek of desperation, and in doing so they give themselves away. She watches and thinks he's still reacting, I still matter, but when she checks and finds nothing, no new posts, no sudden flexes, no signs that you're performing for her, it unsettles her because now the narrative in her mind has no fuel. The man she expected to see one day is nowhere to be found, no status updates, no likes, no late night views on her story, just silence, and silence in the absence of answers becomes unbearable. Seneca said, if you wish to be loved, love discretion. In this case, discretion becomes dominance, because the moment you withhold visibility, your energy, your presence, your emotional tells you triggers something primal in her, curiosity. And not the playful kind, the kind that gnaws. She starts checking your profile more often, not because she cares deeply, but because she can't tell what's happening. Her mind spirals. Has he moved on? Is he seeing someone? Was I really that easy to forget? This is the silent mystery. You don't confirm anything, you don't deny anything, you don't play hot or cold, you're just gone. And this is when the power flips, not through control, but through unavailability, because you no longer feed the story, you no longer play the part. She has no idea who you are anymore, and that is more haunting than any word you could speak. Most men don't realize the power of mystery. They want to be understood, they want to be seen. Healing, they want her to notice, but attention is not the goal. Detachment is why, because attention keeps you tethered. If she can still read your moods from your content, you're still emotionally accessible. If you suddenly respond to her stories or like her old photos, you're still available for decoding. But when you are no longer trackable, you become uncontainable. She'll ask friends, she'll look for patterns, she might even try to provoke you just to see if you still exist in her shadow. Don't respond, don't update it, and correct her perception. Let her invent the story, and let her suffer in its ambiguity. That is the Stoic way, not manipulation. Control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let her thoughts about you run wild unanswered, let them spiral. You owe her nothing, not a reaction, not a signal, not a single post. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You are not her closure, you are her consequence. And here's the beautiful paradox, the more questions she asks herself about you, the less peace she feels. Not because you're punishing her, but because you've become a blank page in a story she thought she authored. You no longer move according to her narrative, you no longer perform on cue. You've taken your energy back, and in that void she meets herself. It is not your presence she misses, it is the confusion, the uncertainty, the inability to decode. You become the dream she can't interpret, the memory that doesn't explain itself, and that's what lingers, not your words, not your wounds, but the not knowing. This is how curiosity becomes obsession, and how mystery becomes mastery. You were once her open book, now you're the sealed letter she no longer has the key to, and you don't even need to be read anymore. 7. Emotional mastery, never let them see you sweat. In the game of power, your greatest weapon is not what you say, it's what you refuse to show. When you control your emotions, you control the room. The moment you crack just one CS, the moment she confirms everything she believed, that you're still affected, still invested, still reachable. That's why emotional mastery isn't optional, it's survival. Most men think strength is loud, a defiant post, a new fling paraded on Lineage gym selfie, captioned with something sharp, but all that noise is reaction, and reaction Is weakness in disguise. Epictetus warned, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. She doesn't have to win the argument, she just has to make you feel it and flinch. That's when she knows he's still mine. But when you show nothing, not anger, not sadness, not thirst, you take that power away. It's not that you don't feel, of course you do, but the man who trains his emotions the way a warrior trains his blade is not a slave to them. He chooses his response, delays his reaction. He stays composed, not for her, but for himself, because your dignity is not a tool for negotiation, it's the core of your being. And here's the uncomfortable truth: she will test you. She'll post something provocative, she'll send a vague message, just innocent enough. She'll act like she's moved on, faster, freer, happier. Why? Because she needs to see if you'll break the moment you respond emotionally, whether in anger, jealousy, or need. She wins, not because she wants you back, but because she still controls how you feel. But if she sees a man who doesn't flinch, a man who responds to her drama with silence, a man who carries himself with calm, unwavering energy, that's the moment she realizes he's gone, not physically, mentally. And that to the ego is terrifying. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have to assemble your life yourself, action by action." Emotional mastery is one such action. It's not a mood, it's a discipline, and it's built in the quiet moments when you see her post something designed to get your attention and scroll past it without a flicker. The man you used to be would have spiraled. He would have overanalyzed, responded, reached out, trying to reclaim control through words or explanations. But that man is gone, because now you understand that silence is not emptiness, it is command. And when you master your reactions, you master the frame. You become the still point in the chaos, the man she can no longer read or provoke. And when she can't read you, she loses her script. That's where her confidence begins to fracture, because women don't obsess over men who chase, they obsess over men who stay unmoved, not cold, but composed, not cruel, but centered. You don't argue, you don't defend, you don't explain, you simply stay rooted in your truth, and bothered, clear, and focused. You owe her no emotional access, especially when she gave up the right to it. Your feelings are not a show for her entertainment, they are sacred ground, and only those who respect it may enter. So next time she tests you, remember this: every response is a revelation, every reaction is a receipt, every emotional leak is a message. You still own part of me. Don't send that message, send silence, send calm, send distance, and if you must engage, do it on your terms, controlled, measured, light as air. The less emotion she sees, the more she feels, because now the man who once wore his heart on his sleeve has learned to protect his core. Now she faces a man who doesn't explain himself, a man who doesn't flinch, a man who no longer dances for closure, and that man, he is not bitter, is not playing a role, he is simply untouchable. 8. The cold shoulder. When you see her again and say nothing loudly, at some point life will place her back in front of you, maybe by accident, maybe by design, maybe because she's curious or just needs to feel she still matters. And in that moment, when her eyes meet your 7 for a second, you will be tested, not with words, but with energy. She'll study your face, she'll search for a flicker, any sign that you're still holding and still hoping, still vulnerable. She'll listen closely, not to what you say, but to how you feel. That's why the Stoic man doesn't prepare to win that moment, he prepares to need nothing from it, because power isn't in your posture, your outfit, your smile, or even your silence, it's in your detachment. Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And when you see her again, nothing is more beyond your control than her presence. Scene, that space, what is in your control, your stance, your tone, your composure. So how do you respond? You don't avoid her like she's poison, that's fear. You don't overperform confidence, that's theater. You simply exist calmly, fully, without performance. If she looks at you, acknowledge her briefly, neutrally, no smirk, no lingering glance, just the kind of nod you'd give a passing stranger at a cafe. If she speaks to you, respond politely, but with no emotional depth, no reminiscing, no subtle digs, no questions that reopen old chapters. You are not cold to hurt her, you are distant, because the bond is gone, not broken, gone. And if she asks how you've been, you say what needs to be said, and nothing more. I am good, that's it. Don't explain, don't inflate, don't showcase, because the moment you try to prove how far you've come, you reveal that you still need her to see it. But the man who's truly moved on, he has nothing to prove, he is the proof. You Must understand she isn't coming back for closure, she's coming back to check the temperature, to see if her grip on your emotions still lingers, to see if you're still orbiting quietly, and if she senses that you're performing, she'll know he still cares. But if she senses nothing but calm indifference, that's when she begins to spiral, because now she realizes something devastating. You're no longer hers to affect. This is not revenge, this is reality. She didn't expect to see a man who no longer reacts, she expected awkwardness, or an ego flex or wounded avoidance, but instead, she meets a version of you she doesn't recognize and cannot reach. That's what stings, not your silence, your evolution. And here's where the power fully shifts. In the past, she assumed she could come back whenever she wanted, that you were a bookmark in her story, easily reopened, but now she sees a man who's rewritten his entire book and left her out of the final chapters. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, receive without pride, let go without attachment. This is what you must embody. See her, acknowledge her existence, but never again make her your gravity. She doesn't need your attention, she needs to feel your absence, not physical absence, but emotional distancia, calm, steady indifference that says, I don't resent you, I simply don't revolve around you anymore. Let her feel that, not as punishment, but as consequence, because in that moment, whether she admits it or not, she will know the man who once needed her no longer does, and there is no colder shoulder than a soul that has healed without her. 9. The rebirth, becoming a man she can no longer reach. There comes a quiet, sacred moment in every journey, not when you get her back, not when she finally reaches out, not even when she regrets losing you, but when you realize you no longer care, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed her in the first place. This is the rebirth. It's the point where you stop acting, stop pretending, stop peeking over your shoulder hoping she'll notice your progress, because your progress is no longer about her, it's about you. She was a chapter, but she is not the story, and the man you are now doesn't seek validation from old pages, he's too busy writing new ones. Seneca said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it wasting it on regret, on overthinking, on hoping they'll come back and say you were right, I was wrong. But what if they don't? What if they never see your growth, your change, your silent rebuilding? That's the moment most men freeze. They wonder if all this healing was for nothing. But a Stoic knows the value of growth is never in being seen, it's in becoming unshakable with or without an audience. That's the man you must now become. You no longer chase women, you chase your purpose. You no longer seek apologies, you seek alignment. You no longer wonder if she'll come back, you wonder how far you can go without looking back. This is the rebirth that terrifies her, not because she hates you, but because she can no longer reach you. And when a woman realizes that the man she left behind has become something greater, something unbothered, something free, it shakes her, because now she isn't dealing with the wounded version of you, she's dealing with a man who learned to turn pain into progress, and that version of you, he doesn't leave doors open, doesn't re-explain himself, he doesn't keep emotional tabs open just in case, he simply rises quietly daily, completely. Let her see that version, not through curated social media posts or forced smiles, but through the lack of access, the disappearance of emotional dependency, the absence of any need to be chosen. You've become a man she can't decode anymore. She used to read you like a script, now you're written in a language she no longer understands. That's what haunts her, because even if she comes back, even if she reaches out, it won't matter. Why? Because you've reached a level where she is no longer relevant, not because she's worthless, but because your self-worth no longer includes her name. This is the greatest irony of growth. The moment you stop needing her to regret losing you is the moment she actually does, but by then you're gone, not hiding, just too far ahead. And if she ever gets close again, she won't find the man who cried, begged, and checked his phone at midnight. She'll find someone she doesn't recognize, a man reborn, untouched by her absence, unreachable by her old tactics. You don't need to block her, you don't need to announce your evolution, you simply continue relentlessly, peacefully. Marcus Aurelius said the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy, but in this case the best revenge is that you're no longer interested in revenge at all. You've traded it for freedom, and now you don't just survive, you thrive, not to prove anything but because that's what reborn men do. 10. The final lesson, you never needed her anyway. Let's return to the beginning, not of the relationship, but of the illusion that you needed her, that she completed you, that without her you were somehow Lest this belief was never about her, it was about a part of you that hadn't woken up yet, the part that mistook attention for love, that mistook being chosen for being valuable, that mistook temporary comfort for lasting connection. But now, after the silence, the detachment, the cold shoulder, and the rebirth, one final realization rises to the surface: you never needed her, not then, not now, not ever. And the most powerful moment in a man's life is not when he gets her back, it's when he no longer wants. To Seneca once wrote, "As is a taliso is life, not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." The same applies to every relationship. It doesn't matter how long she was in your life, what matters is what that chapter taught you. And this chapter, it taught you how to let go, not just of her but of the boy inside you who thought love meant losing yourself. Let's be clear, she wasn't evil, she wasn't sent to destroy you, she was sent to reveal you, to press on the parts of your soul that were still unbuilt, to expose where your self-worth was still conditional, to show you the gaps you were too proud to admit existed. And for that you owe her nothing except gratitude, because now you've grown not into a colder man but into a clearer one. You no longer confuse desire with dependency, you no longer confuse validation with value, you no longer confuse her attention with your identity. And what about her? Maybe she's changed, maybe she hasn't, but the truth is you no longer care, because your life now moves in a direction where she simply doesn't fit. You're too focused, too grounded, too untouchable. And here's the irony: she might return, she might reach out, she might apologize, but when she does, she won't find the man she remembers. She'll find someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't ache, who doesn't hope, not because he's heartless but because he's whole. That's the lesson, the final one. You never needed her to complete you, she was just a mirror reflecting back what you hadn't yet seen in yourself. And now you don't need a mirror anymore, you've become the reflection, solid, clear, still. Marcus Aurelius said the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and now your thoughts are no longer built around her, they built around purpose, around growth, around peace. You no longer live in reaction, you live in alignment. So what now? You don't wait, you don't chase, you build day by day, quietly, powerfully, without needing to be seen. And if the world asks what happened to you, you smile, you nod, and you keep walking, because the version of you that thought she was everything is gone, and the man who stands in his place was always there. He just needed the pain to awaken him. Now go live, not for her, not for revenge, but for the man you were always meant to become. You were always enough, stay untouchable. No one truly wins by chasing, you win by becoming, by mastering your emotions, detaching from the need for validation, and stepping fully into the man you were always meant to be, grounded, calm, untouchable. If this message spoke to you not just as advice, but as a mirror, then this journey is only beginning. At Stoic for Life, we don't teach you how to play games, we teach you how to rise above them through ancient wisdom, modern clarity, and brutal honesty. So if you're done reacting and ready to reclaim your power, subscribe to Stoic for Life now. Join a community of men who no longer beg, no longer chase, and never fold, because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And the man who speaks last often never needs to speak at all.